In life, one of the greatest assurances that brings peace to the human heart is the unshakable promise of God's protection. When people rise against you, when their words pierce like arrows and their actions seem designed to break your spirit, there is still a stronger reality at work. That reality is the divine covering of God Himself, who stands as a shield around those who trust Him. No matter how fierce the attack or how intentional the harm, nothing can break through the defense God has already placed over your life. This is not just a comforting thought, it is a spiritual truth written into the very foundation of God's covenant with His children. He has declared that no weapon formed against you shall prosper, and that declaration cannot be reversed by the hands of men or the schemes of the enemy. Often people believe that their safety comes from their own strength, their ability to argue, defend, or fight back. But true safety, the kind that keeps your soul intact and your destiny unharmed, is not found in human power. It comes from the Almighty, who guards you day and night, who sees every hidden plot and hears every whispered word spoken against you. While you may not always be able to stop others from attempting to hurt you, you can rest in the knowledge that their attempts are powerless against the shield of God. They may strike, but they will not succeed. They may plan, but their plans will collapse under the weight of God's authority. This assurance allows you to walk through life with a sense of confidence that is not rooted in arrogance but in faith. You do not need to live in fear of what people will say, how they will treat you, or what lies they may spread, because God's promise has already declared that those things will not prevail. Every attempt against you must bow to His greater purpose. And when you truly embrace this reality, you begin to see that what was meant to destroy you can be turned into the very thing that elevates you. For even in the moments when people's actions sting and their words wound, God is already at work, building something stronger within you, shaping you into a vessel that cannot be easily broken. The opening declaration of God's protection is a call to release fear and embrace trust. It is a reminder that life is not left to chance, that you are not wandering unguarded through a hostile world, but that the Creator Himself has positioned Himself as your defender. He is not a distant protector who simply observes from afar. He is an active shield that surrounds you in every moment, even when you are unaware of the dangers lurking nearby. The hands that form the universe are the same hands stretched out to cover you, to block what was never meant to touch your soul. That reality is more powerful than the noise of any insult, more unshakable than the schemes of any adversary, and more enduring than the pain caused by betrayal or rejection. When people attempt to wound you, it may feel as though they hold power over your peace, but in truth, they do not. Their words can be sharp, but they cannot cut deeper than the love that holds you. Their actions can be cruel, but they cannot undo the destiny that God has already written for your life. And when you realize that, the sting of their efforts loses its grip on your heart. You are not defined by the harm others try to inflict. You are defined by the protection God has spoken over you. To live in this reality is to live free, free from fear, free from bitterness, and free from the weight of trying to control what others do. You only need to rest in the truth that God's covering is stronger than any force that comes against you. This opening truth sets the foundation for everything else. If God is your shield, then no person, no lie, no betrayal, and no plan of harm can succeed. You can step forward in life without hesitation, knowing that His word stands above every attack. That is the power of God's promise of protection. It silences the fear of what people can do and awakens the courage to live fully, securely, and victoriously under His care. When people hurt you, it is easy to think their actions are always a reflection of your worth. you may find yourself questioning what you did wrong, why they chose to target you, or why you were treated in a way that felt unfair and undeserved. But the truth is, the hurtful actions of others often have very little to do with you and far more to do with them. Many times, people act out of their own wounds, insecurities, or jealousy. What you are experiencing is the overflow of their inner struggles being projected onto you. Instead of seeing you for who you really are, they react to the shadows within themselves. Understanding this does not excuse their behavior, but it brings clarity that their cruelty is not a mirror of your identity. It is a reflection of their brokenness. So often, the reason behind someone's attempt to harm you is rooted in envy. When they see the light in your life, the peace in your spirit, or the favor of God upon you, it stirs something uncomfortable inside them. They want what you carry, but rather than humbling themselves to seek God's blessings, they lash out at the one who already has it. They may not say it openly, but their actions betray a restless heart. Others, driven by pride or bitterness, try to tear others down to make themselves feel stronger. What they cannot achieve through their own growth, they attempt to achieve by cutting down those around them. Recognizing this truth allows you to detach your sense of worth from their treatment of you. You realize it is not about who you are lacking, it is about what they are lacking. This perspective shifts how you respond. Instead of taking their words and actions as a definition of your value, you begin to see them as evidence of their struggle. You understand that their cruelty comes from an emptiness they cannot fill, a battle they cannot win unless they turn to God. In this light, your response does not need to be anger or retaliation, because their attack was never really about you in the first place. It is their own weakness speaking, their own pain acting out, their own unresolved issues spilling over. And when you see it this way, you protect yourself from internalizing their behavior. You do not let their brokenness dictate your peace or your self-image. This understanding is not meant to make you naive or passive. It is meant to strengthen you so that you do not fall into the trap of believing lies about yourself simply because someone else is hurting. Recognizing the source of their actions allows you to guard your heart. Keep your confidence in God and stand firm in your identity. Their actions may sting, but their motives expose more about themselves than they do about you. Knowing this truth is the beginning of freedom, because once you understand that hurtful people are often hurting people, you stop carrying the weight of their choices. You leave their issues with them and stand secure in the truth of who you are under God's covering. One of the most important truths to grasp when it comes to dealing with people who try to hurt you is that the real battle is not with them. On the surface, it looks like their words, their schemes, and their behavior are the main enemy, but beneath it all lies a deeper and unseen reality. Scripture makes it clear that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces of darkness. This means that the harsh treatment from others is often just the outward expression of a greater battle happening in the spiritual realm. When someone lashes out, it is not simply their human weakness at play. It can also be the enemy using them as a tool to distract, discourage, or destroy you. Understanding this changes the way you view opposition. Instead of wasting energy on people, you shift your focus to standing strong against the real enemy who is working behind the scenes. The enemy's strategy has always been to use people as weapons of discouragement. He knows he cannot stop God's plan for your life, so he attempts to weaken you through constant attacks from others. He plants seeds of jealousy, stirs up division, and feeds lies into the minds of those willing to listen to him. Suddenly, you find yourself facing criticism, betrayal, or mistreatment. And if you only see the human hand behind it, you might respond in anger or despair. But when you discern the spiritual dimension, you understand that the fight is not truly with the person in front of you, It is with the enemy of your soul who seeks to derail your faith. That realization helps you keep your heart free from hatred toward others, because you know they are not the true source of the attack. This is why God equips His children with spiritual armor. Just as soldiers would never step into a battlefield unprepared, believers are not meant to walk through life without protection. The armor of God, truth, righteousness, peace, faith, salvation, the Word of God, and prayer covers you in every area where the enemy would try to strike. With these, you are not defenseless. The shield of faith extinguishes the fiery arrows of lies. The sword of the Spirit gives you authority to push back when darkness tries to creep in. Prayer becomes the line of communication that keeps you connected to the one who already has victory over every scheme. This armor is not symbolic. It is a real spiritual protection available to you every day. When you recognize the spiritual battle, you stop being surprised by opposition. You realize that attacks will come not because you are weak, but because you are carrying something valuable from God that the enemy wants to destroy. This awareness does not make you fearful. It makes you stronger. It gives you the clarity to pray with authority, to guard your spirit against bitterness, and to keep moving forward in faith. People may think they are fighting you, but in reality, they are caught up in a war much bigger than they understand. And as long as you stay under God's covering, you stand as a soldier who cannot be defeated, because the victory has already been secured through Him. When people attempt to hurt you, it can feel as though you are alone in the struggle, standing unprotected against their attacks. Yet the truth is, you are never alone, for God has promised to defend His children. From the beginning of time, His word has carried a guarantee of protection for those who put their trust in Him. He does not watch from a distance as you suffer. He steps into the battle as your defender. He has declared that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Notice it does not say that weapons will never form. It says they will not succeed. People may plan, plot, or even act against you, but God has the final say. He has already set a limit on what the enemy can do, and nothing will ever pass through His hand without being turned for your good. Think of what this means in practical terms. Every time someone rises against you, you can be assured that God sees it before you do. He knows the motives of every heart, the secret plans whispered in darkness, and the silent attacks aimed at your peace. While you may not be aware of it, He is already at work dismantling those plans before they ever reach you. What may look like a delay, a closed door, or even a loss in your eyes could very well be His way of protecting you from something harmful you cannot yet see. His defense is not always loud or dramatic. Often it is quiet and hidden, but always effective. You may never fully know how many dangers He has shielded you from, because His protection works constantly, even when you are unaware of the threats around you. There is also a deep assurance that God's defense is not limited to what people do. It extends to what the enemy attempts in the unseen realm. While others may speak lies, spread rumors, or act out of jealousy, the greater danger comes from the enemy trying to sow doubt, fear, and despair in your spirit. Yet God defends you here as well. His Spirit speaks truth louder than lies. His presence brings peace that silences fear. His word reminds you that you are chosen, loved, and guarded by Him. Where the enemy seeks to plant destruction, God grows resilience, faith, and strength. What was sent to break you becomes the very thing that builds you, because God is actively working on your behalf. When you truly embrace this promise of God's defense, you no longer live in fear of people. You do not need to spend your energy proving yourself right, fighting every rumor, or responding to every insult. You can rest in the knowledge that God Himself is your defender. He knows how to silence every tongue that rises against you. He knows how to turn the schemes of your enemies into stepping stones toward your destiny. And he knows how to take what was designed to wound you and transform it into a testimony of his faithfulness. Standing under his defense gives you peace that surpasses human understanding, courage to keep moving forward, and assurance that nothing and no one can succeed against the one God has chosen to protect. There is a unique strength found in the power of silence when faced with people who try to hurt you. Human nature often urges us to respond, to defend ourselves, or to strike back with words sharper than those spoken against us. Yet silence, when chosen with wisdom, becomes a weapon far stronger than retaliation. It disarms those who expect a reaction. It unsettles those who thrive on conflict. And it protects your dignity from being dragged into unnecessary battles. Silence is not weakness. It is discipline. It shows that you value your peace more than their chaos, and that you trust God to handle what your words could never resolve. By holding your tongue, you step aside and give space for God's justice to work. When someone hurls insults or spreads lies, their intention is often to provoke a reaction. They want to see you lose control, to confirm in their own minds that they have power over your emotions. Responding in anger only feeds their desire, but silence robs them of the satisfaction. It shows that their attempts failed, that their words hold no power over your spirit. Silence communicates strength, a calmness rooted not in indifference, but in confidence. It declares without words, "You cannot move me." This quiet strength speaks louder than any argument because it reflects a heart anchored in God rather than tossed around by the actions of others. Silence also protects you from unnecessary regret. Words spoken in haste are difficult to take back, and arguments entered out of emotion rarely produce peace. By remaining silent, you shield yourself from adding fuel to the fire. You give yourself the gift of restraint, refusing to let temporary emotions dictate lasting consequences. In this way, silence guards your reputation and keeps you aligned with wisdom. It keeps you above the noise rather than entangled in it, allowing you to rise higher while others sink into conflict. People may not understand it at first, but over time, silence often proves more powerful than any defense you could have given. Most importantly, silence is a way of showing trust in God's justice. By choosing not to fight with words, you are declaring that you believe God is your defender. You are leaving room for Him to act on your behalf in ways your arguments never could. Silence creates space for God to expose lies, to turn situations around, and to lift you above the reach of those who sought to harm you. It is an act of faith, a statement that you believe His voice will be louder than theirs, and His truth stronger than their deception. In the end, silence becomes not just the absence of words, but the presence of trust, a shield that protects you while God works to bring justice in His perfect timing. One of the greatest defenses against the harm of others is learning how to guard your heart. The heart is the wellspring of life, the center of your emotions, your faith, and your peace. When people attempt to wound you, their ultimate goal is not just to hurt your feelings in the moment, but to plant something inside you, bitterness, anger, insecurity, that will continue to damage you long after their words are spoken or their actions are done. If you allow these things to settle in your heart, they begin to shape how you see yourself, how you treat others, and even how you relate to God. That is why protecting your heart is so critical. It is not about pretending people's actions don't sting. It is about making the choice not to let their poison take root in your soul. Guarding your heart means being watchful over what you allow to stay inside you. Hurtful words may reach your ears, but you decide whether they settle in your spirit. Cruel actions may sting, but you determine whether they harden your heart or whether you release them into God's hands. If you are not careful, the enemy will use people's attacks to plant seeds of resentment, Those seeds, if watered by constant replaying of the offense in your mind, will grow into bitterness. Bitterness then begins to consume your peace, cloud your judgment, and keep you trapped in cycles of anger. But when you guard your heart, you refuse to give bitterness a place to grow. You keep your heart soft enough to love, strong enough to endure, and free enough to move forward without carrying the weight of someone else's wrongdoing. Guarding your heart also means surrounding it with God's truth. The lies spoken by others will try to convince you that you are less than what God has called you to be. If you are not grounded in His Word, those lies can sound convincing. But when you fill your heart with the promises of God, His truth becomes a shield. Every insult is countered by the reminder that you are chosen. Every betrayal is silenced by the assurance that you are never abandoned. Every attempt to tear you down is met with the promise that God is lifting you up. This is why Scripture tells us to meditate on what is pure, true, and praiseworthy, because what you allow into your heart will either protect you or expose you. Ultimately, guarding your heart is about protecting the flow of life within you. If your heart becomes polluted with anger and pain, it will spill over into everything you do. But if you keep it clean, rooted in God's love, it will overflow with peace and strength no matter what others do. People may try to strike against you, but they cannot touch the life God has placed inside unless you let them. By guarding your heart, you ensure that their attempts stop at the surface and never penetrate the core of who you are. This choice keeps you free, unshaken, and firmly anchored in the truth that no matter how others treat you, your heart belongs to God, and in His hands it is always safe. Another essential way to stop people from hurting you is by learning how to set boundaries with courage. Too often, we mistake kindness for weakness and forgiveness for permission. We think that being a person of faith means allowing others to take advantage of us without limit. But love does not mean tolerating abuse, and forgiveness does not mean giving people repeated access to wound us. God calls us to walk in wisdom, and part of wisdom is knowing where to draw the line. Boundaries are not walls of bitterness. They are gates of protection. They separate what you allow into your life from what you refuse to tolerate, and they help you live in peace without being entangled in constant harm. Establishing boundaries requires courage because not everyone will like them. Those who have benefited from your silence or compliance may resist when you finally take a stand. They may accuse you of being selfish, unkind, or distant. But setting boundaries is not about pleasing people. It is about protecting your heart and your purpose. You cannot fulfill what God has called you to do if you are constantly drained by toxic relationships or manipulated by those who refuse to respect you. When you courageously say, "This far and no further," you are not rejecting love. You are honoring the value God has placed on your life. Even Jesus Himself did not entrust Himself to everyone. He had circles of closeness, and He walked away when necessary. If He could choose boundaries, so can you. Boundaries are also a way of walking in truth. When you allow others to mistreat you without consequence, you give them the false impression that their behavior is acceptable. By setting limits, you speak truth into the situation, that their actions are harmful, and that you will no longer participate in cycles of disrespect. This is not cruelty, it is clarity. And often, boundaries not only protect you, but also confront others with the reality of their behavior, giving them the opportunity to change. Some may not, but your responsibility is not to control them. It is to guard your own life and walk in wisdom. It takes courage to create and enforce boundaries, but that courage grows from knowing you are backed by God's strength. When you fear losing relationships or upsetting others, remember that. Your peace and well-being matter more than temporary approval. God does not call you to live in bondage to people's opinions. He calls you to live in freedom. Boundaries are one of the ways He grants that freedom. They release you from unnecessary pain, preserve your inner strength, and keep your path clear for the purpose He has placed before you. People may resist at first, but over time, those who truly value you will respect the limits you set. And those who do not were never meant to have that place of influence in your life. Choosing boundaries is not selfish. It is wise stewardship of the life God has entrusted to you. One of the most liberating ways to stop people from hurting you is through the power of forgiveness. At first, forgiveness may seem like weakness, as if you are letting people get away with what they did. But forgiveness is not about excusing wrong behavior. It is about setting yourself free from the grip of their actions. When you hold on to resentment, you are the one who carries the weight. The offense may be long past, but the anger lives on inside you, poisoning your peace and clouding your future. Forgiveness is the decision to release that poison, to hand the burden over to God, and to walk in freedom. It is not saying that what they did was right. It is declaring that what they did will not control you anymore. Forgiveness also closes the door to the enemy's schemes. The enemy thrives on division, anger, and bitterness because he knows that a wounded heart is more vulnerable to his lies. When you refuse to forgive, you leave an open wound where bitterness festers, and bitterness eventually hardens your heart. A hardened heart cannot hear God clearly, cannot love freely, and cannot live in peace. But when you choose to forgive, you remove the enemy's foothold. You stop giving him room to manipulate your emotions, and you cut off his ability to use the offense to keep you trapped in the past. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is warfare. It is a weapon that breaks the enemy's grip and allows God's healing to flow into your life. Another powerful truth about forgiveness is that it shifts the weight of justice from your hands into God's hands. When you hold on to anger, you carry the burden of trying to make things right yourself. But only God can truly bring justice. He sees motives you cannot see. He knows the full story you may never understand. And He promises that He will repay what was done. When you forgive, you are not letting someone escape accountability. You are simply letting God be the judge. And when you do this, you will find peace in knowing that you no longer need to waste energy on revenge or bitterness, because the matter is in the hands of the one who never fails to do what is right. Forgiveness also transforms you from the inside out. It takes away the power of the offender to define your identity. Without forgiveness, you are tied to the hurt, and everything in your life can begin to revolve around that pain. But when you forgive, you cut the cord between your heart and their actions. You rise above the situation instead of being chained to it. This does not mean forgetting or allowing people to continue hurting you. It means you are free to move forward without carrying the weight of what they did. Forgiveness is not about them. It is about you, your healing, and your future. By releasing others into God's hands, you step into a life of freedom, peace, and resilience where no one's actions can hold you captive. One of the most beautiful truths woven throughout Scripture is that God has the power to take what others meant for harm and turn it into good. People may act out of jealousy, cruelty, or malice, hoping to wound you, but their plans never have the final word. God, in His sovereignty, is able to take the very attacks designed to break you and use them as tools to build you. What others thought would destroy you becomes the very thing that elevates you. This does not mean that the pain was never real. It was. The betrayal, the rejection, the harsh words, and the unfair treatment leave scars. But those scars are not signs of defeat. They are reminders that God can redeem even the darkest moments and transform them into testimonies of His faithfulness. When people set traps for you, they may succeed in creating temporary obstacles, But God can use those obstacles to redirect your steps towards something greater. A rejection that felt crushing at the time may be the very thing that pushed you toward a door you never would have discovered otherwise. A betrayal that pierced your heart may have separated you from those who were never meant to walk with you into the next season of your calling. Even the seasons of loneliness caused by mistreatment can become the places where you discover a deeper intimacy with God. What was meant to harm you ends up positioning you for growth, for strength, and for blessings beyond what you imagined. This truth requires faith, because often, in the middle of pain, it is difficult to see how anything good could come from it. In the moment, it feels as though the attack has shattered your peace and left nothing but ashes. But God specializes in taking ashes and bringing forth beauty. He takes what was torn and weaves it into a new design. He takes what was broken and reshapes it into something stronger. And He takes the shame intended for you and turns it into honor. Time and again, the enemy's plans backfire, because every attempt to bring you down becomes an opportunity for God to lift you higher. Believing this truth also gives you the strength to endure without bitterness. When you know that God can bring good out of evil, you no longer feel the need to waste energy on revenge. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you begin to declare, "God will bring something out of this." That perspective changes everything. It allows you to face hurt not with despair, but with expectation. You look forward to what God is building in the midst of pain, and you trust that no attack is wasted in His hands. In the end, people may have thought they were writing the final chapter of your story when they tried to harm you, but God is the true author, and His ending is always redemption, restoration, and victory. When you truly believe that God is your shield and your defender, you begin to walk in a kind of confidence that cannot be shaken by the opinions or actions of others. This is not arrogance or pride, but divine confidence. The assurance that your worth, your protection, and your future are secured by God Himself. Human approval becomes secondary because you understand that your identity is not defined by how others see you, but by how God sees you. When someone tries to diminish you with their words or harm you with their actions, their efforts lose power because you no longer rely on them for validation. You walk with your head high, not because of who you are in yourself, but because of who you are in Him. This divine confidence frees you from the fear of people. Many live in quiet bondage to what others might think or say. They hold back from pursuing their calling because of ridicule, or they shrink under criticism because they crave acceptance. But when your confidence is rooted in God, you rise above that fear. You understand that people may misjudge you, but their judgment is not final. They may reject you, but their rejection cannot cancel God's calling. They may oppose you, but their opposition cannot overthrow His plan. Confidence in God allows you to live boldly, to pursue your purpose without hesitation, and to keep moving forward even when others stand in your way. Walking in divine confidence also shifts how you carry yourself in the face of adversity. Instead of responding with insecurity or desperation, you respond with calm assurance. You do not have to argue every point or prove every accusation wrong because you trust that God Himself will vindicate you. Your silence, your composure, and your consistency become a testimony of your faith. People begin to notice that you are not easily rattled, not easily shaken, and not easily moved by negativity. That steadiness speaks louder than any defense you could give, and it draws attention to the strength of the God you serve. This confidence also keeps you grounded in humility because it is not based on your abilities, but on God's faithfulness. You do not boast in yourself. You boast in Him. You recognize that the reason you can endure opposition, overcome trials, and stand firm in the face of attacks is not because of your own strength, but because of His hand upon your life. And when you live in that reality, your confidence becomes unshakable. No matter what people do, You know that you are covered, chosen, and equipped by God. This allows you to live freely, free from fear, free from people-pleasing, and free from the weight of proving yourself. It is the kind of freedom that empowers you to walk boldly into every season of life, untouchable by the schemes of those who wish to harm you, because your confidence rests on the one who never fails. There comes a point in your walk with God when you realize that you no longer have to live at the level of those who try to harm you. God has a way of lifting His children above the reach of their enemies. This does not mean you will never face attacks, but it does mean that those attacks will no longer determine your direction or your destiny. When you rise higher in faith, in character, and in purpose, you begin to see that the schemes of others cannot touch what God has placed upon your life. Their words may echo, but they cannot cling to you. Their actions may strike, but they cannot derail you. God elevates you to a place where the noise of your haters grows faint, and their power over your peace is completely broken. Living above the reach of haters requires a mindset shift. Instead of focusing on who is against you, you begin to focus on who is for you. Instead of spending energy fighting battles at a lower level, you choose to rise higher, where those battles no longer matter. Eagles do not waste time fighting crows. They soar to altitudes where crows cannot breathe. In the same way, when you allow God to lift you, you discover that the negativity, the gossip, and the petty attacks simply cannot survive at the level of your calling. You rise above, not through arrogance or superiority, but through surrender to God's plan. And at that higher place, the weapons of others lose their effectiveness. When God elevates you, even the attempts to harm you end up serving as a platform for your promotion. The more people try to drag you down, the higher He lifts you. The more they plot against you, the stronger your testimony becomes. This is not because of anything you do in your own power, but because of His hand upon your life. Living above the reach of haters means you no longer feel the need to respond to every attack or explain yourself to every critic. You learn to let your fruit speak for you, because a life blessed by God is the loudest response to those who wish you harm. This way of living brings peace, because it keeps you from being entangled in battles that are not worth your time. If you are constantly looking back to address every insult or chase down every rumor, you will never move forward into the future God has prepared for you. But when you rise above, you leave those distractions behind. You keep your eyes fixed on your purpose, your heart rooted in God, and your life aligned with His direction. People may still talk, they may still act against you, but none of it can reach you when God has lifted you higher. Their reach is too short, their strength too weak, and their plans too small to touch the destiny God has placed over you. At the end of it all, the greatest assurance you can carry is that God Himself is your protection. People may try to hurt you, circumstances may rise against you, and the enemy may attempt to strike, but none of these forces are greater than the one who guards your life. God is your shield, your refuge, and your fortress. When you stand in His covering, you are untouchable in the ways that matter most. This does not mean life will always be free from challenges, but it does mean that every challenge will meet the God who fights for you. The assurance of His protection gives you the courage to walk boldly into the future, knowing that no weapon, no scheme, and no word spoken against you can ultimately prevail. Standing in God's protection is a daily choice. It means waking up each day with the confidence that your life is not in the hands of people, but in the hands of the Almighty. It means refusing to live in fear of betrayal, rejection, or opposition, because you know that God has already gone ahead of you. He sees what you cannot see and defends you in ways you may never fully understand. There is a peace that comes from knowing your life is surrounded by His presence, and that peace becomes your greatest strength. Even in the middle of storms, you stand firm because your foundation is not shaken by the wind. It is secured in Him. When you embrace this truth, You no longer waste energy trying to control what others do. You do not have to fight for your reputation because God will vindicate you. You do not have to cling to relationships that are toxic because God will bring the right people into your life. You do not have to fear tomorrow because God is already there. His protection is not just a promise for today, but a covering that follows you into every season of life. He has declared that He will never leave you nor forsake you. And that promise is the anchor that holds you steady no matter what comes your way. So take this charge. Walk forward with boldness, clothed in the confidence of God's protection. Let your heart rest in His strength, and let your spirit be unshaken by the actions of others. People may still try, but they cannot succeed against you because you belong to Him. Every word meant to harm will fall powerless. Every scheme designed to trap you will collapse. Every attack will turn into an opportunity for God to reveal His faithfulness. Stand in His protection and live with the unshakable truth that you are never alone, never defenseless, and never without hope. In His hands, you are safe, you are secure, and you are victorious.